Okay, now moving on to wave 6. Wave 6 was targets versus Jinn enemies. So obviously the Jinn enemies would fly around. I've already said at the start of the video, I wasn't really happy to see Jinn enemies come back anyway, but they're a bit easier to deal with than what they were in Uncharted 3, so I guess it's something you can deal with, and targets are, well, targets are targets. Moving on to wave 7. So I couldn't see any mods for this particular wave. It was just a siege area in a different siege area. I mean, you saw the siege areas earlier, so you had south side, you had north side, and this is middle map. So those are the 3 siege areas. I believe they said at some point that each map has only 3 siege areas. So it's possible it's not as many siege areas as Uncharted 2 and Uncharted 3 because they had a few more, as far as I can remember correctly. So I guess you could still potentially learn to defend these locations. But 3 is better than 1. It gives you a bit of variety, and obviously you don't know where to run to even if it says there's a siege area coming up. And now one of the funny things that I spotted before they actually talked about was this choker running towards the player. And if you look closely, I know that the quality of the picture isn't very good. That's because of the stream, by the way. It's nothing to do with me. I don't understand why, but their stream quality is never that good. I really don't understand why a company like Naughty Dog can't invest, or maybe they just choose not to stream at a higher bitrate, because when you're trying to watch gameplay, especially fast-moving gameplay, the images are quite blurry. And when you try and take a screenshot, well, you can see it for yourself on the screen. It's not great. You know, it's whatever, but it would be nice to have a slightly better quality stream. Anyway, back to the image. So that is, if you've got a keen eye or can figure out the fuzz, is a brute choker. So he's apparently the toughest choker out of the lot. So you got the light choker, you got the armor choker, you got the brute choker. So the brute choker is the toughest, but he's also the slowest out of the 3 chokers. I mean, I say slowest, it's all relative, right? The chokers are all ridiculously fast. So, you know, slow is all relative. It's still going to be faster than most enemies for sure. Moving on to wave 8. Now this one was quite interesting. When I read it on the screen, and again I read about it before they talked about it, and I was like, I can't be reading that right, surely. And I don't know if you can make it out from the screenshot that I put on in the video, but it says for the modifier for this particular wave is mirrored world. Now if you play the campaign, Uncharted 2, 3, 4, one of the options if you want to mess around is you can mirror the world when you're playing. It's one of the gameplay modifiers that you can mess around with in the custom menu. And basically it flips the world, as the name suggests, mirror world. So left becomes right, right becomes left. And so it was kind of bizarre because I recognized the map, but obviously when you take left expecting to go to a certain location, it's actually you need to go right to go to that location. So it's a bit weird. But you know, kind of interesting that they've managed to implement it into multiplayer. And the fact that the world can flip in a couple of seconds. So I mean, I should put it on screen now, but basically the guy goes to the chest, there's a flash of white, and then suddenly when that flash is over, the whole world is flipped, and it applies for you and your teammates. In addition to that effect, the wave does have a time limit for you to complete it in, and they also remove the radar. Now the reason why they removed the radar is because they said that it was far too confusing. So not only was the world flipped, which already throws you for 6, by putting in the radar, which is also flipped, and you're not going to be used to the radar, so there's no point having it in. So it was causing more problems for most players, so they took it out because it was too weird, basically. So yeah, that's quite cool. Be interested to try that out. And one of the things they talked about when they were talking about this mirror world effect was that some maps will be affected more heavily than others. So symmetrical maps, not so much of a big deal, but maps where obviously one side is inherently different to the other side, you're going to notice quite a big change, and it might throw you a bit, so just be prepared to deal with that. Moving on to wave 9, the objective was again targets, and they had Jinn enemies again, and also this particular wave had a modifier. So the modifier was extra explosive damage, which is actually kind of fun. So basically the damage was 3 times explosive damage, and one of the things I said was when you get a modifier like this, you'll generally find more enemies carrying that type of weapon. So you'll see a few more enemies on the map using explosive weapons. So once you've killed those enemies, you can then use their weapons against their allies. So that's kind of cool. And I guess as a wave 9, I mean, obviously the enemies are going to be a lot tougher to deal with, but because you've got 3 times explosive damage, you could potentially, if you're a decent player playing in a good team, you can probably deal with these enemies a lot easier than you would on a lower wave without using explosive damage, well, without the explosive damage bonus rather. And then moving on to wave 10. So I was fully predicting a boss wave to appear at this stage, but thankfully there wasn't. Instead, there was this really weird modifier. Now, I don't know if you can read it on the screen, but it says Hydra Wave. Now, when I hear the word Hydra, I assume, you know, the mythical beast where if you chop its head off, it'll grow back 3 times and so on and so forth. So they did say that you start off with 3 targets on the map. So you got an armored target, you got a brute, and you got a hunter. Every time you kill one of these targets, they will respawn 2-fold. So you kill a hunter, 2 hunters spawn in. You kill those 2 hunters, 4 hunters spawn in, so on and so forth. So I guess it's going to make for some interesting gameplay if you're playing with people who don't know what they're doing. But as a team, if you're in a good team, if you're a good player, I guess you can play that quite smart. So one of the tactics they said was to kill the brute. Obviously, the brute would then spawn 2 brutes. If you kill those brutes, you can take their weapons, and then you can mow down the other players using the heavy weapon, which, if you're on top of it, is great. But if you get overrun by brutes, then it's kind of a bad plan. Similarly with hunters, I mean, they're the easiest target to take out of the 3. But if you get overrun by the hunters, then it's game over. And armor targets, while they're the least annoying to deal with in terms of they're predictable. I mean, armor targets are armor targets, right? If you take care of those, but again, if you get overrun by those, then it could be a problem. So, I mean, it's kind of fun, but very gimmicky, and I don't really know how it's going to play out until you get into the match. I guess if you just hunker down, you could just kill targets as they come to you, but wait and see. Now, one of the things I didn't really clarify was, so for example, they said armor target, but the impression I got from seeing the gameplay was that if you kill an armor target, it will spawn 2 more armor targets, but not necessarily of the same type. So if you kill 1 armor target using an AR, he might respawn as a sniper, respawn as a guy carrying an RPG, if you follow what I'm saying. So I think that's what they were supposed to say, but they didn't quite clarify it as clear as they should have done. Okay, and I think that's pretty much everything they talked about during that set gameplay. So I'm just going to quickly go through a summary version of some of the minor points they mentioned and some of the stuff they talked about after the match finished. So basically, the first thing they talked about was the fact that you don't earn stars for completing a match. You get what we call a completion stat. So every time you complete a run, you'll get a +1 on the board, whether it's for light, moderate, hard, or crushing. Just something to note as well. These guys were playing on moderate and they made it look hard, so I don't know if they weren't very good or maybe it's actually harder than it appears to be to me anyway, but I don't know, it just seems as though for a moderate difficulty these guys should have done better, and there are a few very close calls, and sometimes I guess the situation got a bit out of hand with the chokers and all the rest of it, but it just seems as though they could have picked better players to show off the gameplay. So again, just to recap, so you can play this as a free update if you've got either the Lost Legacy or Uncharted 4 multiplayer. It will come as a free update, and the multiplayer player base will be exactly the same basically, whether you jump on one or the other. All weapons in the game will feature in Arena, so whereas some weapons didn't feature in Survival to start off with, they should now all feature in Arena. I mean, again, they're not all great anyway, so it's a moot point, but just in case you fancy playing around with a few more weapons. Something they were keen to highlight was that Arena is different to Survival. It's a lot less constrained, and because there's so many more waves and they were able to play around with the wave varieties, they could take a few more liberties. And obviously the bonus wave is an example, so a bit of fun, and some of the modifiers, I mean the triple explosive damage for example is another one where it's not too serious, but it can be fun, you know, under the right circumstances. So even though you might not like some waves, chances are you might like some of the others, and because there's potentially 130, again, I don't know how different these 130 waves are going to be. They could just be variations of each other, which means there's literally less than 130, but let's just take their word for it, and that's assuming there's 130 different types of waves. Then even if you really hated a certain wave, the chances of you playing that wave again, you know, on the next wave or in another match, it's a 1 over 130 basically, in order to land that wave. So if you really hate it, chances are it won't roll around again anytime soon. But likewise, if you enjoy a certain wave, it won't come around again anytime soon because, as I said, there's 130 to choose from. So if it's 1 over 130 each time, pretty small chance. And then of course you factor in the fact that not every map plays the same, so you might enjoy certain objectives on certain waves on certain maps, but then you might hate them on other maps. So there is that, I suppose, to contend with. And again, they reiterated that Siege, there's now multiple siege areas on every single map. Treasure Hunt will feature on every single map. Again, enemies will have the same health whether they're introducing wave 1 or wave 10. They've already got the same health level, so it's just whether or not they appear or not in that particular wave. Now this was quite an interesting thing. Arena can be played solo, so they didn't go too much into detail about it because obviously it's meant to be a co-op game mode, but in Survival as it stands, if you play solo you get put in with a friendly AI. So I'm wondering if you get the same sort of situation in Arena, or if it's just literally you by yourself. Now, if I enjoy playing Arena, I might consider trying to get every single stage done crushing solo, because that to me is a challenge that I would relish in doing. But it's whether or not I actually enjoy the game mode. So let's wait for it to drop first, and then we'll go from there. Of course, I'll post that to AcornVision Gaming if I manage to get it done. Well, if I decide to go for the challenge. Now, they talked about enemies dropping heavy weapon ammo, and they obviously in some of the waves, for example the explosive waves, it says that more enemies will appear carrying that type of weapon, but they also said that some enemies, despite carrying these heavy weapons, won't actually drop any ammo when they're killed. They're there just to be a tough enemy, not necessarily to feed you with heavy weapon ammo, so I guess in a sense they're just trolling you. Speaking of tough enemies, they then mentioned something about brutes, and I don't know if this applies to brutes and other enemies as well, but they said that enemies can teleport. Well, they said the brute can teleport, which very surprised to hear and not very happy to hear either, because I didn't really enjoy teleporting enemies in survival. I don't think a lot of people did, and it made for kind of annoying encounters sometimes, to be honest, so I'm a bit annoyed about that, but we'll wait and see when it comes out. Didn't see many instances of that in the match, so maybe it's quite rare, maybe it's restricted to just boss types, but I mean, if you throw down an Eldorado or Mystic or whatever, I think they showed 1 or 2 uses of things like Chintamani Stone and Eldorado, and I don't recall enemies teleporting, but they could have done, I suppose. As I said, these players weren't great, they were all over the place sometimes, so it's kind of hard to keep track of what's going on. Also, the bitrate of the stream wasn't very good. As I mentioned at the start, Warlords do return. Again, I didn't see any in this particular match, so I don't know if that means they're reserved for higher difficulty matches, or maybe it's just obviously 1 over 130 means the chances of them appearing might be quite slim. And even though the Warlords and bosses do return, apparently when they spawn in with enemies, the wave composition is going to be slightly different. So, for example, on New Devon, there was plenty of armor targets to go alongside the bosses, but maybe if you get a boss wave on a lower difficulty match, then maybe they'll just spawn in with light enemies. I don't know. They didn't really talk about it, but that's probably what I'm assuming is going to happen. Now, they did say that all waves were brand new and none of them were taken from survival. I mean, if it's just a variant, they might call it new, but I call it a variant of an existing wave. So, again, wait and see what these 130 waves, apparently all brand new, look like when the update drops next week. And at the very end of the match, they did show that you can continue to unlock weapons, just like you do by taking out bosses, except in this particular match, they didn't actually take out a boss, but they still got a weapon unlocked. So, I'm guessing you get one at the end of every single match, and it works the same way as it does in survival. So if you play crushing, you can get the highest tier unlocks. If you play lower levels, you can only go up to a certain level of unlock. I guess in some ways, if you're good at arena, this is probably going to be the easiest way of doing it, but it's not going to be the most time efficient way of doing it. So for example, you could do Madagascar over and over and over again, even on crushing with a good team or an average team. You could probably complete it in 15 minutes thereabouts, maybe less. And so you can guarantee yourself a weapon at the end of that boss fight every single 15 minutes. Whereas in arena, I mean, they took 20 minutes, and I said they weren't very good. So I guess with a good team, you could probably bring it down to about 15 minutes. But that's just for a level 3 up maximum level 3 weapon basically. Level 4, level 5 is for hard and crushing. So I guess if you are farming weapons, then, to be honest, in my opinion, if you still want to get survival done, and if you want to farm weapons, you better do it now before Lost Legacy drops, and obviously this update drops for multiplayer, because once it does, you're going to see a massive decline when people are playing survival, unless they're trying to beat times, but then the chances are they'll be in a party. So if, like me, you normally play with pubs and you just do matchmaking searches, then I think the player base for survival is going to be maybe increased overall, but for survival, the stages 1 through 10, you're going to find less players. So you might want to push your plans forward to try and get it done this weekend, because I expect there'll be a surge of players jumping back on just to refresh themselves. I've been playing a few matches just to warm myself up, but yeah, I think if you need any challenges completed for survival, you need to get on it before Tuesday, basically. Already talked about the fact there's no stars, so it's just plus completions. Now, these completion numbers, besides bragging rights, they also count towards unlocking new skins. So they showed off a few. I'll put a few on the screen now. Basically, skeleton skins, and if you do a certain number of runs on a certain difficulty, you unlock a new skin. I think there's a couple for each of the characters. They weren't too clear on this, so I'm assuming a couple for each of the characters, and obviously some will be done on light, some of them moderate, some of them on hard, and then some on crushing. And I think they said the hardest one to get, or at least the most grindy one to get, was Skeleton Starlight Chloe, and you need 100 runs on crushing, which again, I will enjoy completing just for the sake of the challenge, but I don't think the skin looks very good, so even if I unlock it, I wouldn't be using it anyway. 100 crushing matches, that's quite a long time. Again, if I enjoy the game mode, I'll be putting in easily 100 matches, but if I don't, then, well, I won't bother because I don't really care about the skin. Something that still bugs me, and has consistently bugged me ever since co-op dropped, is that it doesn't tell you in the match, or when the match finishes, what difficulty you've just beat it on. Yes, it will show +1 on the stat sheet at the end of when you get back out to the lobby, but it doesn't tell you in the game. I mean, I guess for most people it doesn't really matter because they don't record matches, but for someone like me who does record matches, and obviously I post gameplay to AcornVision Gaming, so it doesn't really help me show players that I'm playing on a certain difficulty. It could be easier, you know, is what I'm saying, to show at the end of the scoreboard what the difficulty you're playing on is. So apparently there will be another stream on Monday. I'm guessing it's to coincide with the launch of the Lost Legacy on Tuesday, so they might be showing off some gameplay from the Lost Legacy, possibly, or maybe they're going to be showing more co-op stuff, I don't know. I don't think I'm going to be watching it because I think watching this stream has already shown me enough of what I need to see. I'm already planning to get the game anyway, so it's a moot point. I'm looking forward to just trying it out for myself, you know, get a first-hand impression. And I mean, I did mention it in my want list on AcornVision Gaming, but I didn't see any gold rush whatsoever. And I don't know if this forms part of the 130 waves. As I said, it's possible that it just didn't show up in the match, but I didn't see it at all, and they didn't talk about it at all. So a little bit worried that hasn't come back. I'm looking forward to playing it if it does come back, but no split game modes as I hoped, so everything's just going to be mixed together, and if it comes up, it comes up. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Again, just to reiterate, I think that this is just a randomized version of survival. So survival's preset. They put you through a journey, if you will, with enemies progressively getting harder as you complete stages. But in Arena, enemies are already preset in terms of the health that they get. It's just whether or not they appear in those waves. And obviously the objectives and the modifiers are completely random, which adds to the challenge, but I guess it could be fun, could be frustrating, depends on what you get and whether or not you enjoy it on that particular map as well. So yeah, definitely not a return to the original Uncharted 2, Uncharted 3 Arena. I mean, as I said at the start of the video, I mean, there's still hope, but I don't know, if there was not a lot of hope before, there's even less now with this coming out. And I mean, I get the impression that this is probably going to be the final big update for Uncharted 4 multiplayer, and it's been over a year, so we can't really ask for too much more, but it was nice for them to add something with the Lost Legacy. That was a nice touch, and I guess, I mean, they are selling it for like 30 quid or something in the UK, so for them not to add anything other than that side DLC, we don't know how big that campaign's going to be, but I mean, if they add that and then the multiplayer stuff as well, I guess it's kind of worth the money, at least for me anyway. I do get the impression that this is probably going to be the last major update, so I don't know if there's going to be much more in the way of survival stuff. I'd be surprised if they bring an adventure back now. I genuinely think that that's probably gone now. I don't think that that's going to happen anymore, which is a shame because I really did enjoy adventure in the previous two games. And also I think multiplayer has probably had its updates as well. I don't know if they're going to add too much more. I mean, there's a fair amount of maps. There could be a few more, don't get me wrong. Weapons, I'm fine with. There's loads of weapons now. I'm really happy. One of my big complaints for Uncharted 2 and Uncharted 3 multiplayer was that there wasn't a lot of weapon variety, but there's plenty in Uncharted 4, so I'm happy with that. They've made great strides in increasing variety there. But yeah, they could add a few more maps. As I said, they've got plenty of classic maps which they haven't remastered, haven't brought back in. Whether or not that's intentional because they intend to remaster Uncharted 2 and 3 at some point, it's possible. It's a stretch, but it's possible. Or maybe they just haven't got the time to do it. I don't know, wait and see. That's the problem with Naughty Dog. They haven't really told us anything, and they probably won't tell us either if they're doing any of this stuff. So hopefully they are working on it, and they will continue to release stuff in the future. That's my wish. That's my hope. But I'd really like to see Uncharted 2 and 3 come back now because, if anything else, I wouldn't mind if they diverted their attention to doing that and then ending the support for Uncharted 4 multiplayer, because I think they've done quite a lot. Some of it expected, some of it unexpected. But yeah, I personally would like to see Uncharted 2 and Uncharted 3 multiplayer remastered and brought to PS4. That would be really nice. I would really appreciate that. Obviously, I need to get into the mindset that Arena is different to what I knew from Uncharted 2 and Uncharted 3. This is no longer the same game. I mean, we got that sense from Survival. It's a completely different game, and I shouldn't keep comparing the two together, but I can't help myself. I like the original games, but this is different. And from what I've seen from the stream, I guess it could be fun, but until I play it myself and play it quite a lot and put in a few hours, and, you know, obviously complete matches and stuff and play with pubs, I don't know for sure how it's going to go. No one does. It hasn't come out yet. So I'm going to give it a chance, but I don't know. There are some very big question marks about the game mode in general from what I've seen from the stream and obviously from the trailer. Alright then, so a pretty long video. I've obviously had to split into two parts because one part would have been ridiculously long to watch, but hopefully you got a lot of information from there. As I said at the start of the video, I have pre-ordered The Lost Legacy. Hopefully it arrives on the day. I will be doing a gameplay walkthrough on my Plays channel. I'll be uploading the whole thing. That channel is linked in the description. If not, well, I'll probably tweet about it and all the rest. So, and then once I've done with that, I will then move on to multiplayer. Well, co-op arena, or well, survival arena, and I'll be posting matches of that, first impressions and all the rest of it as soon as I get those done. That will go into AcornVision Gaming, and any news will continue to be posted on this channel, just AcornVision. Alright then, so if you managed to stick with me through to the very end, having joined me at the start of the first part, then I thank you for your company. And if you enjoy the content, consider tapping that like button. I really do appreciate it. If you've got any thoughts you'd like to share with me regarding the stream or anything else I've talked about today, let me know in the comment section below. Is there anything in particular you're worried about or you would have liked to have seen but didn't appear? As I said, for me, it's probably Gold Rush. It was a bit of a shame not to see that. And obviously there was a whole list of stuff in the trailer that I didn't want to come back. But as I said, the trailer itself wasn't very good, but watching through the stream, watching through the gameplay, as average as it was from the players, some of it seemed fun, and I'm looking forward to trying it out and just getting my hands on it myself and experiencing it for myself before I make a final decision. And obviously, if I've got any thoughts to share, I will of course post those to my various channels in due course. So until then, thanks for watching, thanks for listening, take care, and I will see you later.